So day one of the NHL draft is officially over, and in this video we're going to review the draft picks, the trades, and the signings, all the moves that happened on day one. We're going to grade the trades and then talk about some winners and losers from day one of the draft. So the first major deal of the day was the Anaheim Ducks sending Olen Zellweger to the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for prospect Anton Wahlberg and the 45th overall pick in this upcoming draft. So the Ducks have a logjam on that left side of the defense. Seemed like they were going to trade Mintyukov earlier in the season, but Zellweger has ended up being the odd man out. He's an undersized, smooth skating defenseman, 22 points through 76 games this season. He hasn't really had that breakout that I think some people have expected him to, but the underlying numbers are pretty solid, at least when it comes to offensive creation. Has played very limited minutes in Anaheim. He's an RFA, so should be interesting to see what kind of deal he settles on with Buffalo. I think the Sabres are kind of looking for a Bowen Byram replacement here, not necessarily at the same level. I think Byram's a much better defenseman. Maybe he just becomes a third pair guy for this team. Maybe they flip him and try and use him to acquire something else. We'll see what happens. And for the Ducks, you get a decent prospect in Anton Wahlberg. He's been about a half a point per game in Rochester. 37th overall pick back in 2023 by the Sabres. And they also get the 45th overall pick. So I think it actually is pretty solid value for Zellweger. So if I'm giving each team a grade, for the Sabres, I'd probably go with a B on this. And for the Ducks, I think I would go with an A-. The next deal we saw was the Boston Bruins acquiring JJ Peterka in exchange for the 23rd overall pick and the 2028 first round pick, which is conditional, as it is the Florida Panthers pick that they got in the Brad Marchand trade. It is conditional, so if it ends up in the top 10, the Bruins can choose to keep that and then send the Mammoth their 2029 first. So the Bruins boost their top six here, acquiring JJ Peterka, who's a strong offensive forward. He's 24 years old and makes $7.7 million for the next 4 seasons. He had a tough year in Utah after getting traded over from Buffalo. 25 goals, 47 points, which was a big bump down from his last season in Buffalo, where he had 68 points. However, I believe he had a really high on-ice shooting percentage and it wasn't sustainable. But in the right situation, maybe playing with an elite playmaker like Pastrnak, he can reach that 30-goal, 70-point potential that he's shown. And while it's an expensive price to pay, I think people are overreacting a little bit to it. And I really like this addition for the Bruins. They definitely need some more offense out of players not named Pastrnak or Morgan Geekie. And for the Mammoth, they actually flipped that 23rd pick to the Red Wings for Sebastian Cossa, who's an intriguing goalie prospect. We've talked about him on the channel before. He's going to come in and hopefully provide some relief to Karel Vejmelka. And then they get that 2028 first round pick. We'll see how good Florida is, but that could be very valuable. So maybe if that ends up being a high pick, then this completely changes how we look at this deal. But as of right now, I think for Boston, I like the bet, so I'm going to give them an A-. And for the Mammoth, it sucks that Peterka didn't work out for them, but they still have a pretty loaded offense. Add some draft capital here, so A- as well. The next deal we saw was Pavel Dorofeyev going to the New York Rangers. In exchange, Vegas got the 26th overall pick, the 92nd overall pick, and a 2028 conditional first round pick. There's a top 10 protection, so if the protection hits, then I believe they would get the Rangers 2029 first round pick. Pavel Dorofeyev is a 25-year-old goal-scoring winger, 37 goals and 64 points this season. He had 35 goals the year before. Also actually has really solid defensive numbers, which I was kind of surprised by. And he should slot very nicely into the Rangers' top 6. Maybe playing with a playmaker like Gabe Perreault. And with this deal, he also signs a 7-year extension with the Rangers at an $11 million cap hit. Now, there's probably some shock value with that number, and it's probably an overpay at this moment. But with the salary cap projected to rise so much, I feel like the 11 million number is kind of like more of the 8 to 9 million that we've seen in years past. For trade grades, I'm going to give the Rangers an A-. Definitely an expensive price to pay, and the contract too. But Dorofeyev's shown that he can be an in-and-out 30-goal guy every season, and that's something the Rangers desperately need. Vegas ended up trading down to number 29, took a right shot defenseman Juho Pipparainen. Pretty solid pick there from them. And if the Rangers don't pull it together, that 2028 first-round pick could be super valuable. Would be interested to see if they actually use it or if they try and flip it. In an ideal world, they would have been able to keep Dorofeyev, but they are in a cap crunch and he's the casualty here, and they got pretty good value back. So I'm going to go with an A- as well for Vegas. And the last major deal we saw was the St. Louis Blues acquiring Mason McTavish for the 15th and 29th overall selections. On the Blues end, Mason McTavish is a very interesting player. He's going to be a project for sure. He has a lot of deficiencies in his game when it comes to his skating, his off-the-puck play defensive game. But he's shown in the past he can produce very solid offense in a top 6 role. 22 goals, 52 points in 2025. Took a step down this season, 17 goals, 41 points. Was a healthy scratch at points, even in the playoffs. I think he's definitely an upgrade on that second-line center position for them, and if McTavish can find his game, then they do have a pretty solid 1-2 down the middle with Thomas and McTavish, I think. But it's definitely a pretty hefty price to pay. They had 4 first-round picks. I probably would have preferred to see them just try and trade up and acquire a Vigo Bjork through the draft or something like that. And on the Anaheim perspective, at number 15, they selected Nikita Klepov, a super skilled winger who is playing for Saginaw in the OHL, led the entire OHL in points. He's a bit of a project as well, but he's a guy who definitely has legitimate offensive potential at the NHL level. And then they ended up trading that 29th overall pick to move up 1 spot and select Marcus Nordmark, a Swedish winger, one of the biggest boomer bust prospects, it seems like. Pretty skilled, dynamic player, but has a lot of issues with, his work ethic and motor on the ice, it seems like. So if I'm grading these deals, I'm going to go with an A- for the Ducks. I'm just not that high on McTavish. And they ended up taking 2 projects who maybe they don't work out, but the upside it might be there. And for the Blues, I'm going to go with a B- because I feel like there's a better player out there that they could have acquired with these 2 first-round picks. And before we actually get into the draft, let's just go through some of the signings from yesterday quickly. Burns signed a 1-year deal with the Avalanche. It's a bonus-laden contract. I don't really see much upside there, but it's cheap enough, so I'll go with a B. Brett Kulak signs 5 years, $4.5 million as well with Colorado. His defensive numbers took a hit this year, but I feel like he was a lot better in Colorado than he was in Edmonton. I don't see a ton of upside in this deal, but I think it's a fine contract, so I'll go with a B. Tony Giangelo signs 2 years, $4.5 million with the Islanders. Obviously, he was a very solid offensive contributor for the team last year, but he still has his defensive woes as usual, so I'm going to go with a B-. Jordan Spence signs a 4-year extension with a $5 million cap hit with the Sens. I think this is a really fair value. He's got tremendous underlying numbers and stepped up big time when they faced injuries down the stretch. Also young enough, so he could even get better. So for the Spence deal, I'm going to go with an A. And then Brant Clark signs a 5-year extension with the Kings at a $7.4 million cap hit, and this one really blew me away. Clark was finally given some more ice time this season, and he had a phenomenal year, 40 points from the back end as well as fantastic underlying numbers. Only 23 years old, and he's going to be the future of this defense for LA. And I'm honestly shocked that it's only $7.4 million, considering the caliber of player I think he can be. And when you look at other defensemen and what they're signing for around the league, like Bowen Byram might get $13 million. So that one, I think that's an A+ in my opinion. So for the draft, I'm going to go with my biggest winner and my biggest loser, and then just mention some steals and stuff and interesting picks I found. The biggest winner is pretty obvious, San Jose, acquiring Ivar Stenberg, Keaton Verhoff, and Ryan Lynn. The rich get richer, and their prospect pool is so stacked. I also think Chase Reed going number 7 to Seattle, that's a win for them. They're in need of some talent from the back end. I know they have Montour and Dunn right now, but for the long term. I think Ethan Belchez was a very solid pick by the Mammoth at 17. I was a big fan of the Red Wings trading Kosa for number 23 and selecting Hurlburt as well. Novotny, 24, I think that could be a steal for the Canucks as well. My Habs traded up and got Pugachev, and I was a big fan of that. We really needed a player with intensity and pace in the bottom 6, so I like that pick for us. The Preds got an absolute steal at 31 with Tommy Bleal, I think. Very high-end offensive potential, I think, with him. And for losers of the draft, it's hard to say because you never know with prospects. They can pan out, they can bust. But one team, well, I actually think they got a couple decent players, but I'm going to say our losers are the St. Louis Blues. Tynan Lawrence, he might have potential to be a steal. Maddox Dejanay, I think that's an okay pick as well, but trading the other 2 firsts for Mason McTavish, I just wasn't a fan of that. So they're my main losers, but not a bad draft necessarily. So let me know down below, what did you think of the NHL draft, all the trades, the signings, and the actual picks? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.